No one danced with the blind cowboy, until a stranger took his hand. The harvest festival arrived every autumn in the little frontier town of Red Creek. Lanterns hung from every wooden beam, children laughed as they chased each other across the dusty street, and the sound of fiddles echoed through the old dance hall. Families came from ranches miles away, dressed in their finest clothes, ready for an evening of music and celebration. Among the crowd stood a tall cowboy named Ethan Brooks. Years earlier, a terrible accident while protecting his younger brother from a runaway horse had stolen his eyesight. Though blind, Ethan had never lost his courage. He worked harder than anyone on the ranch, knew every trail by memory, and could recognize every neighbor by the sound of their footsteps. Yet there was one thing he could never grow used to: the pity in people's voices. That night Ethan leaned quietly against the wall, holding his old wooden cane. He smiled whenever he heard others laughing, but inside he wished he could disappear. The music began. Couples filled the dance floor almost immediately. Boots stomped against the wooden boards while colorful dresses twirled beneath the lantern light. Every young woman had already found a partner. No one walked toward Ethan. Some whispered, "He's blind." Others said, "He'd only slow the dance." A few looked at him with sympathy but quickly turned away. Ethan lowered his head. He pretended he didn't notice. For years he had learned to hide disappointment behind a gentle smile. The song ended. Another began. Still no one came. The room grew louder with laughter while Ethan stood alone beside the wall. Then something unexpected happened. The front door slowly opened. A young woman wearing a dark blue dress stepped inside. She carried herself with quiet confidence and looked around the room before her eyes rested on Ethan. She didn't ask anyone who he was. She simply walked straight toward him. The room gradually became silent. People stopped dancing. Even the fiddler lowered his bow. The stranger stopped in front of Ethan. Without saying a word, she gently reached out and took his hand. "My name is Grace," she said softly. "Would you honor me with this dance?" Ethan looked surprised. "You know I'm blind." "I do. You still wish to dance?" Grace smiled. "I didn't ask you because you can see. I asked because I believe you have a kind heart." For several long seconds Ethan couldn't speak. Finally he nodded. "I'd be honored." The musicians slowly began playing again. Grace placed Ethan's hand gently on her shoulder and held his other hand tightly. She whispered directions whenever they turned. "One step left. Now forward. Perfect." At first Ethan moved carefully. But before long he began remembering the rhythm. Instead of fearing every step, he trusted Grace's voice. Soon they were gliding across the dance floor together. The crowd watched in complete silence. No one had expected the blind cowboy to dance so gracefully. Children smiled. Older couples wiped tears from their eyes. Even the toughest ranch hands quietly removed their hats. When the song ended, the hall erupted into applause louder than anyone had ever heard. Ethan blushed. Grace laughed. "You dance better than most men I've met." He smiled. "I had the best partner." After that night everyone wanted to meet Grace. She explained that she had recently moved from another town to become the new schoolteacher. When people praised her kindness, she simply answered, "I only treated him the way every person deserves to be treated." Her words spread through Red Creek faster than any rumor. Things began to change. Neighbors who had once ignored Ethan now greeted him warmly. Young boys asked him to teach them horseback riding. Ranchers hired him to train horses because they realized his hearing and patience made him extraordinary. Every Saturday evening Grace and Ethan danced together. She never treated him as broken. He never treated her as a hero. They simply enjoyed each other's company. As the seasons passed, friendship slowly turned into love. One spring afternoon Ethan invited Grace to the hill overlooking Red Creek. Wildflowers covered the ground. The wind carried the scent of fresh rain. Ethan held a small wooden box in trembling hands. "I can't see your face," he said quietly, "but I know your smile better than anyone else's." You brought light into a world I thought had gone dark forever. Grace, would you marry me? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding became the biggest celebration Red Creek had ever seen. The entire town attended. The same dance hall where Ethan had once stood alone was now filled with people cheering for him. When the first dance began, Ethan and Grace stepped onto the floor together. This time no one watched with pity. They watched with admiration. Children who had been too young to remember the old harvest festival asked why everyone seemed emotional. An elderly rancher smiled. There was a time when that man stood alone because people judged what he couldn't do. Today we celebrate everything he can. Years later, Ethan and Grace opened a small riding school where children with disabilities learned horseback riding and confidence. They believed every child deserved the chance to feel strong, capable, and accepted. People traveled from neighboring towns just to meet the couple whose story had become legendary. Whenever someone asked Grace why she had chosen Ethan that first night, she always gave the same answer. I didn't rescue him, she said. He was already strong. I simply offered him the chance everyone else refused. Ethan would smile every time he heard those words. Because he knew the greatest gift Grace had ever given him wasn't a dance. It was dignity. And Red Creek never forgot the lesson. The strongest person in the room is not always the one who can see the farthest, ride the fastest, or speak the loudest. Sometimes true strength belongs to the one who keeps a kind heart after being overlooked, and to the one brave enough to reach out when everyone else turns away. From that day forward, whenever the harvest festival returned, no one was ever left standing alone beside the wall. Every newcomer, every widow, every lonely traveler, and every person with a disability received an invitation to dance. Because one stranger's simple act of kindness had changed an entire town forever.